Hello everyone, Fina here, and this is my little pup Freedom. She needed to have some attention right now, the moment I had record. I really wanted to talk about Project Hail Mary the moment I finished the book the very first time. And the way I'm saying that, you probably already know that I read it more than once since it came out. And that was in May this year. And now it's just August. So it's really good. So I'm excited to gush about this book. This review is going to be spoiler free because I went into this book blind, and I think it only makes it better if you don't really know what's going on about this book. But let's talk about Project Hail Mary. So I read it shortly after it came out in May for the very first time as a book. And then in June, I listened to it as an audiobook again. And that added a whole new frickin' dimension to it that I loved so much. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was the most entertaining book that I've read, aka listened to, in a long, long time. So I'm excited to talk about it, and I'm really excited to hear from you, from those of you who've read it, if you agree with me, and from those of you who haven't read it, why not? Why is this? You need to pick up this book. It's amazing. All right, let's start with the premise at a super high level. And again, I'm not going super into detail because it is really easy to spoiler the book. But at a high level, you follow the main character, Ryland Grace, who at the beginning of the book, who wakes up and doesn't really know where he is and what he's doing. And he also doesn't remember his name, really, or a lot of other things. So it really starts with him figuring out what is going on, where is he, what's happening, and the story goes from there. The story itself is told from his perspective, and it switches between today, his current view, him waking up and not knowing where he is, and the past. And it is really far apart, and then it's especially the past, gets closer and closer to where we are today. So during the switches, you learn more and more about what happened, and you learn more about who he is as a character, where he's coming from, etc. What I thought was interesting, the way Andy Weir wrote the book, is that some of those flashbacks relate to the situation he is in. You could call it a convenience moment, but I think it's interesting the way he spun the story of Ryland Grace figuring things out, and then the moment he is struggling with a specific situation, you read about the flashback and you learn more about what that is about that he is struggling with. I hope that makes sense. But I thought it was an interesting way of spinning the story and keeping it really flowing and entertaining. The book itself is a science fiction book. There's a lot of science in there, so Andy Weir definitely loves his science part. I'm no expert in physics or whatever else they are talking about in this book. But what I found interesting is that he either explains it in a way that I was able to follow in some cases. So I actually learned something from reading the book. I don't know if I'm selling it right now with that comment. And in some cases, it completely went over my head, which is totally fine, I think, because it didn't take away from the story, but it made it feel more authentic. The general narrative has some really funny and snarky moments in it, and I loved the humor throughout this book. So Andy Weir definitely meets my type of snarky, ridiculous humor that makes this book really entertaining. Talking about entertaining, one thing that I also really liked about the book is that it made me go through all the emotions. So I loved, I cried, I hoped, I got angry, I was devastated. There was everything in this book, and I mean, crying with tears even in certain moments, and that's something that I really rarely have. I actually cannot, there's one other book where I can remember that I cried, but besides that, I don't remember ever crying for a book, especially for a book that is not meant to be sad in itself. It's actually a really hopeful story. But either way, it made me cry, and it was okay. It fit to the book. It fit to the whole storytelling. Andy Weir makes it really easy to get excited about the character and to feel all the things the character is feeling. And it was just such an amazing ride. I mean, I can't really put it in words how much heartache I had throughout the book, how much everything, like my entire being reacted to the book, and how much I could not let the book go. I had to know what was going on. It was just such a great story and such an yeah, I have a hard time in putting it in words, but I think I made my point. Also, again, without going into any spoilers or talking about tropes or anything, because it is, as I said, really easy to spoiler this book, I think it was incredibly imaginative. So the whole story end to end was so unique, and I really loved what he wrote up and how he spun the story and how it moved forward and how Grace, deals with the situation he is in. But also, he ended it really well. I was not able to envision an ending to the book where I would have been satisfied, but he made it work. Everything that happens throughout the book, it ends in such a satisfying way where you're, you're going through all those emotions, you're feeling the loss and the devastation, and he makes it into a really wholesome story and into a really wholesome ending, because the story is, in general, like the premise of the story is devastating. So you can read it on the cover, right? He wakes up in the middle of nowhere in space, all alone, and he's essentially, the name of the book says Project Hail Mary. He is the last hope of humanity. That is tragic. I mean, talk about there's no chance in hell, you're going to make it. But Weir really figured it out to spin this story into something, again, that gets you through all the emotions, and into something that makes you live through all the scenarios, good, bad, etc., etc. And I have actually nothing negative to say about it. So it's all pros for me, all positive things for this book. Again, Project Hail Mary was the #1 read so far in the year. I talked about it in I will put it one of those corners here. I talked it in my best, worst, most disappointing, and most surprising half-year review. Project Hail Mary has been the book for me, and I don't think I will forget it anytime soon, and I don't think I will forget what it is about, and forget about Grace anytime soon. All the other characters that people are talking about, especially in the flashbacks, etc., they are also really great. He's really good at making you understand how the characters tick and why they make the decisions they make. Another pro that I really enjoyed, again, it is a devastating situation, and I thought he thought through what we might do in a situation like that really well. Yes, it is a far distant, right, the story itself, it feels like a far distant future. I don't think that in any near term we will experience something like that, at least I hope not. But the way he thought through how we might react to it and how we then might actually handle a situation like this, I thought was really well done. And I don't think there are any flaws in the story from my end. And I usually always find something. Even in my favorite fantasy series of all times, there are things where I'm like, that could have been done better. But this book, there's really nothing that I could say that could have been done better. Of course, I read the reviews and I talked with other people about it because it is a big release at the moment. And I know some other people's had issues with the science dumps. So again, just be prepared. There are science dumps. It seems to be, I haven't read many other books by Weir, only the randomized short story. It seems to be his thing. Just read over them. If you understand it, if you learn something, great. And if you don't understand it, it doesn't steal away from the story. So it doesn't make you understand the story less if you do not understand that particular physics tidbit or something. So you don't need to worry about all of that. So you can really read it and then move on. And really rarely are those science info dumps long. They're usually just a short paragraph, so easy to manage. And it shouldn't diminish your reading experience at all. Again, my personal opinion. I know there are some out there that were a bit more bugged by those science dumps than I am right now. This was actually not an easy review because I couldn't tell you much about the story itself. I'm sorry about it. If there's one thing that you want to take away is go get that book. And if you haven't already, go read it. That's all I say. It is really such a great story. I hope you enjoyed my review. I hope it helped, even though I wasn't able to talk in depth about the story. If you are interested in a spoiler review, I'm more than happy to do that. That's going to be much easier and much more informative. But again, I highly encourage you, if you're interested in reading it, don't watch too many reviews. Just go and read it. It adds so much more value to the story if you go into it blindly and if you don't know anything about trope or what's happening further along, etc. At least for me, it really helped elevating the whole experience of reading this book. Well, thanks so much for stopping by. Thanks so much for checking out my book review. I hope I see you with my next video and that you have a great rest of your day. Bye!